All right, welcome to our next lesson on the Persian Wars within the overall unit of ancient Athens. It's definitely going into like 4 or 5 parts here more. So the last one we talked about, well, what's in front of you? Well, we talked about Xerxes and his just huge army that he had assembled from all parts of the Persian Empire, and his whole goal was to come and crush the Athenians, as well as get all of Greece to submit to him, and if they don't, crush them as well. So you have Themistocles here of Athens that realizes it's coming. He sees this years ahead of time, and he prepares for it. Is able to get a navy built for Athens, encourages other nearby city-states to build more ships like Corinth. And then actually basically goes around just using that phrase, join or die. Like, hey, we join together, we can stop this threat, we can remain independent, or, being our free city-states and things like that. If not, well, we're just all going to die. And then he comes up with a battle strategy that I call the battle strategy using the Isthmus of Corinth, where he builds that wall. Again, I know I said in the last video, but builds the wall across that little narrow neck of land right there in between the Attican Peninsula and the Aegean Peninsula, and he's hoping to set up a naval battle to destroy the Persian navy and therefore strand the Persian army without any supplies in Greece. So, pretty good plan. Definitely when it looks like, well, you're just going to die. The Persian army is too big. So, now, as they're executing this plan, and now we're getting into the lesson for what this video is meant for, as they're executing this plan where they're actually evacuating all the population they can from Attica, from Athens and the whole peninsula of Attica as best they can, and moving them over to the Peloponnesian Peninsula, they get word that Xerxes and the Persians are making a lot better time than they thought they would. So they're actually coming down much quicker than they thought they would. They realized they needed to fight a bit of a holding action, meaning, hey, we need to basically send a force up and just try to hold off the Persians for a few days so we can get the evacuations done and make sure that wall is fully built by the time the Persians get down here. So I think if I remember the story all right, it was like they needed what they thought was maybe like a week, somewhat like a week or so to get that built. So they sent up a force of a couple thousand men. And that's where this is going to lead into what I wanted to go into last lesson, but keeping it for here, and that is the Battle of Thermopylae. Basically, the force that is sent up to basically stop the Persians is led by one of the 2 Spartan kings, a guy named King Leonidas. Now, he has only 300 Spartan warriors with him. You could say like his honor guard. And this, yes, if you ever heard of the last stand of the 300, this is that story. But usually what we don't hear of in the last stand of the 300, there was about 7,000 other soldiers that came up with him. So it wasn't just a little force. He had a lot of troops with him. And he picked a pretty good spot to try to plug up the Persians. It was in a place called the Pass of Thermopylae. Basically, if you're looking at the picture off to the right there, the Pass of Thermopylae, that's by the way, that's not a real photograph. That's an artist's rendition of what Thermopylae looked like back then, because of just erosion over time, it doesn't look like that today. But they had essentially just a couple hundred yards or so of just this pass that they could easily plug up with a few amount of men. Kind of like putting a cork in a bottle. You can stop that massive amount of guys coming at you and kind of fight them in a one-on-one situation instead of being completely overwhelmed because you're just in this pass. On one side you have the ocean, on the other side you have a mountain. I just forgot the mountain's name. Como? Dang it, I can't believe I forgot that. Anyways, a big mountain on the other side, so you just aren't going to get around. And the Persians do not understand the topography of ancient Greece very well to just kind of take a different route. They need to come this route, especially since they need to stay next to the sea to get their supplies. So this is the area where Leonidas decides to basically stop them. And to make sure that the Persians aren't able to drop troops off behind Leonidas and his land troops, Themistocles comes up with that Athenian navy, that new Athenian navy, to essentially stop any attempts by the Persians to get through. That's a part of the story that we don't hear of that much, is that the Battle of Thermopylae wasn't just a land battle between these 300 Spartans and the innumerable Persian hosts of men, but it was also a fight between Themistocles' Greek navy and the Persian navy. That those were both going on, you could say, at the same time. So how does this play out, though? Anyway, so I'll just bring that up so you can get the notes down if you'd like. Just enjoy the pictures, I guess. Yes, I did take those off of, at least I took one of those off of the movie 300. So, but what you have happening here is Leonidas and the Spartans, they're actually a bit, how do you put this, ashamed that they were not at Marathon, and they do not like the idea that the Athenians can tout this whole idea that we're the best ever because we beat the best army ever, and Sparta, you didn't come up, you chickened out. So Sparta has something to prove here. They definitely want to prove that they are the best of the best by going up against the best. And this is where the whole last stand of the 300 does stand a bit true, because King Leonidas basically tells the Greek soldiers, you're going to stay back, and you'll basically plug the gap once we're no longer able to. We Spartans are no longer able to hold the gap. Now the gap was actually a little bit, the gap of Thermopylae, the pass of Thermopylae was a little bit wider than they wanted it to be, fight effectively, so they actually get here first before the Persians do, and they build a wall. Now, according to the story, it said that they used a bunch of Persian scouts as part of the mortar to build the wall, and getting into a gruesome side of things. That's definitely something the movie 300 plays up. But they build this wall out into the sea, so they can't be outflanked, and they can't get overwhelmed either. They can just have just a good straight-up fight with the Persians. Our 300 against your 300. You can't get any more troops in there than that to fight. So, I'm not going to go into the whole story here. I'm also planning on talking about the Battle of Salamis as well, which is another major battle in this whole thing. But basically, the first day, the Spartans do incredibly well. They hold off the Persian assault. The Persians send a ton of light infantry guys, kind of like what you're looking at in the bottom right there, that are not very well armored. The Persians are thinking that they'll be able to push through the Spartan lines or the Greek lines just through sheer force of men. But that's the whole thing. I think I explained this earlier, but in Greek fighting with the phalanx style, you're just a big wall of bronze. Your shields, your armor, you're very heavy, and these guys are not going to push past you if you're sitting about 4 or 5 rows deep, which these 300 Spartans do. And for the first day, they easily, and I mean easily, hold off the Persian assault. The Persians use anything from chariots to cavalry charges, and the Spartans still hold pretty dang strong through all of that. The next day, the second day, Xerxes sends in what are called his immortals, his best soldiers ever. They're the best of the best. And for that entire day, you have a big fight between the immortals and the Spartans, where again the best of the Greeks are going up against the best of the Persians have, and the Greeks easily win. And this is where Sparta is able to say, yes, we are the best of the best, because we didn't just beat a Persian army, we beat the Persian army, or their best troops at this point. But hold their heads high now and not have to take it from those dang Athenians any longer about winning at Marathon. So at this point, after the second day, and by the way, I am skipping over a lot here. I'm summarizing big time. I'm not doing this justice. Go read or listen to or watch a dramatized version of this. It's a fun story. So, but this next part of the story I'm going to get to is, it was seeming like the Greeks could hold out almost indefinitely. The Spartans are doing so good. They got 7,000 more soldiers behind them. Maybe they can win the whole war right here. It's seeming like that that second day. Unfortunately, though, during the night, Xerxes is able to, I don't know if you could say capture or find or whatever, a local Greek farmer, just a Greek person that lives in this area. And he's able to, it's said that he basically bribes this Greek guy with just everything he could ever want, all these treasures and blah, 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 and just tons of stuff, and says, hey, can you show me a way around that mountain, get my soldiers around those Greeks? And because of the major bribe that he receives, like, sure, I'll lead you around. And so he leads about 3,000 immortal soldiers around the backside of the mountain on an old goat trail. The Greeks see them coming, and they realize that we're not going to be able to hold this pass if they get us from both sides. But again, the whole reason for coming up there now, they're thinking now we need to pull back. The Greeks are thinking we need to pull back. But the whole reason to go up there was to buy enough time for the wall to get finished on the Isthmus of Corinth, and for the evacuations of the Attican Peninsula to continue, for Athens to get evacuated. So King Leonidas decides, I'm going to basically hold off for one more day to give us enough time. He orders the other 7,000 soldiers to leave, go home, fight another day, which most of them do, except for what I believe is about 700 Thespian soldiers actually stay with them. So when we say the last stand of the 300, you can almost say it's more like the last stand of like the 1,000 to 1,100 instead. But hey, definitely more on the romantic side of this when we say the last stand of the 300, the epic stand. So, anyways, so the third day, the Spartans are ready for battle with those Thespian soldiers, and they are surrounded from both sides. The Persians come at them over and over and over again. There's a lot of fighting that goes on. Leonidas falls like halfway through this whole melee, and then the rest of the battle just turns into the Spartans and the Thespians trying to get Leonidas's body versus the Persians trying to take Leonidas's body, and they're literally like having this tug of war over his body. And sometimes the Persians get him, sometimes the Greeks get him. It just goes back and forth until it finally comes down to you just got like 150 or 100 guys left alive on the Greek side. Their lines are broken. The Persians back off, and Xerxes decides to finish this off by just showering them with arrows until every last one of them are dead. That's how the story goes with the last stand of the 300. Kind of this epic battle, epic defeat, but definitely an underdog thing where it seemed like they were going to be able to do it, but just couldn't hang on in the end. But even though they didn't get the full week that they thought they needed to allow the evacuations and the wall to be built, as far as the story goes, the 3 days were enough, basically. So, the Persian army does make it down to Thebes, subjugates Thebes. Thebes actually joins the Persian army at this point. And then they get to Athens. Now, there were about 500 guys that were like, we're not leaving Athens, we're going to go down with the ship type thing. Man, they definitely go down with the ship. Athens is destroyed down to the last brick type thing. Xerxes just wants the whole thing just gone. And the 500 guys left defending it are also killed as well. But the rest of the Athenian population is safe behind that Corinthian wall. Now that brings up this next battle that I'd like to talk about in this video. In fact, we might just get through all of it in this video. We'll see how we're doing on time. Battle of Salamis, though. This is a naval battle. Even though the Xerxes and the Persians were able to get to Athens and destroy it, again, he didn't really destroy Athens because he didn't destroy the people. It sounds a lot like that third Thor movie. Asgard isn't a place, it's a people. Well, I wonder if they kind of get that from this story a little bit. I have no clue if that's just coincidental or if there is an influence there, but a little bit that way. So Xerxes knows, though, that if you're going to destroy Athens, you got to get the people. And he's also really ticked off that all these Greek city-states are standing up to him, and he just wants to crush everyone. But now he runs into that wall. He isn't going to get past that wall. The Greeks have finished it. They have it defended by tens of thousands of men. Like that, it's doing its job. So he thinks exactly what Themistocles wants him to think. I'll just sail around, drop my guys off behind you, and do the same thing to you that I did to Leonidas at Thermopylae. And Themistocles is just waiting for this. So this is what sets up the Battle of Salamis. Salamis, by the way, is an area just right there underneath the Isthmus of Corinth. These maps aren't the greatest at looking at it, but, well, looking at the overall view what's going on isn't the greatest, but these maps I put in here do a good job of just showing what happens with the fleets. So I'm going to use this map over here to explain this as best as possible. Simply put, this area right here, a place called Piraeus, the Persian army is camped outside of it, waiting for the Persian navy to come up to give it passage over to the other side, the Peloponnesian Peninsula, and start basically getting the Greeks from two sides, win this war. So you have the Persian army here. The Persian navy is sailing up like this. Then the Greek navy is hidden behind this big, long peninsula here. So the Persians don't see them. So as the Persians start coming up, you have, I don't know, a dozen Athenian ships or so behind here. And they come out as they see the Persians coming and kind of taunt the Persians, the lead Persian ships. They just taunt them by being there. They act like they're about to attack the Persians, like we're going to stop you, just these dozen ships, and the Persians got like 800 ships or so coming up. So those lead Persian ships start going after those Greek ships. The thing is, you need to understand with these old triremes, the picture of the ships you see up in the upper right, like, you don't turn left or right, nor do you sail for yourself. You follow the herd. It's like a herd of buffalo. Where the lead buffalo goes, you follow. So when the lead Persian ships start kind of getting excited, like we're going to get our first kills of the day, we're going to kill those Athenian ships, they start chasing them. Well, everybody starts chasing in after them as well. The Greeks, I mean, in my mind, I don't know if this is the way it goes, but in my mind, I just see this idea of like the Greeks like going as fast as they can forward, and then someone just ringing a bell and saying, all right, go backwards. They have to start rowing as far as they can backwards to try to keep out of the clutches of the Persian Navy, because these guys are the bait. They sail up and around that peninsula right there, come this way. The Persian fleet follows to then see the Athenian fleet going full steam, basically ramming speed, if you've seen the movie Ben-Hur, straight at them at a perpendicular direction. The bad thing about this, and I hope I can see my hands all right, like the Greeks are coming in at the Persians, so these are the Persians, these are the Greeks, there's way more Persian ships, but the deal is you do not want to get hit like this, like that, you're dead meat. Like the trap is sprung, the trap is going to work, and if you're those first Persian ships on that left-hand side, the Greeks are going to nail you. You're dead. So what do you want to do? You want to turn your ship this way so that you kind of stop that ramming capability of the Greek ships to hit you. The problem is that, well, you got kind of the left side of the left side of the Persian fleet and the right side of the Persian fleet. As this side is trying to get away from the Greeks and try to go parallel to them, this side hears about the Greeks attacking, and then they want to turn into them. So they start turning into them, and kaboom. The Persians start basically sinking themselves by running into each other. Then they don't really know who is who. They don't know which ship is an enemy ship or a friendly ship, and they start fighting each other. Again, these are multi-ethnic ships from different areas of all around Persia. They don't necessarily know who each other are as very well. The Greeks get in there and start causing tons of damage, but it is said that most all the ships that are sunk that day, something like around 600 Persian ships are sunk, are mostly sunk by themselves because of the confusion and just the brilliance of Themistocles' trap. When Xerxes sees his fleet go down and he only has like 100 to 200 ships left, and the Greeks definitely have won the day, he actually gets on one of the ships and hightails it out of there and just leaves his army in mainland Greece. Those hundreds of thousands of troops, he just leaves there. So the Battle of Salamis, like we talk about the Battle of Marathon. We talk about being this epic battle, and it is. We talk about the Battle of Thermopylae being this epic last stand, and it is. But all of that leads up to this battle. This is easily the most crucial battle of all the Persian wars, this naval battle, where the Persian fleet is destroyed. Once the Persian fleet is destroyed, the army is stranded. And what that means is no more food. They're not able to get the Greeks, not able to win this right away. So Xerxes leaves, I can't remember who he leaves in charge. I don't think it's Mardonius. It's another M name, I believe. Mardonius was the guy at the Battle of Marathon. But he leaves another guy in charge, and the instruction, you will finish this fight, but he runs away. And for about the next 10 years, you have this kind of Cold War situation, this battle of what's called attrition, see which side will give up first type thing. And the Greeks start winning this one. Since they now control the seas and the Persians don't, they land troops all over the place, just harassing the Persians. Like they'll come off, they'll destroy a bunch of fields of grain. Oh, I forgot to explain that. The Persians actually spread out and have to start farming a bit to feed themselves. They subjugate whatever Greeks are left and use them as, you could say, slave labor. Thebes is actually trying to help them out a bit there, but there's not enough food to feed everybody from there. So they have to spread out, and so the Greeks will then land war parties, raiding parties, destroy a bunch of farmland, kill off a bunch of the farmers, and then get back on their ships and leave before the Persian army is able to come down and bear down on them. And this pinpick strategy is used over and over again over 10 years, where they whittle down the Persian army from its 250, 300,000 or million, as Herodotus claims, down to around like 80,000 men or so, through basically people getting killed, desertions, and things like that. Persian army is a shadow of what it was. And it's at this point where the Greeks think, we're only outnumbered 2-1, we can take them on now. And you get the very last battle, called the Battle of Plataea. Basically, you have about 40,000 Greeks, 10,000 of which are all the Spartans, so the entire Spartan strength is there. Go up against that 80 to 85,000 Persians. And in the beginning, this battle doesn't go very well. The Greeks, it actually looks like the Greeks are going to lose, but mostly because of the Athenians and the Spartans, mostly the Spartans, the Greeks are able to pull this out. In fact, the Spartans really prove in this battle, over any other battle, that they truly are the best soldiers out there. They kind of snatch victory from defeat type thing. I like to explain in class just how this works, just kind of the step-by-step of this battle, because it's fairly interesting. Not going to do it in this lesson video. There's more than enough YouTube videos out there that talk about the Battle of Plataea and how it goes, and how it kind of starts off as like, oh crap, and then turns into, yay, we did it. How we did it, we don't know, but we did it. Spartans, you were awesome. But anyways, I'm just going to leave it there. This will be the last, not the last video of ancient Greece, but this will be the last video of the Persian Wars. So able to kind of take the next two things I was thinking about, Salamis and Plataea and Thermopylae, and put it all together. And we'll call that good. And when we come back, we're going to start talking about the Peloponnesian Wars. Oh, God, I just made that sound like we're ending. Sorry, there's a little bit more I totally forgot to put in here. Please get this down. I'll talk more about this in the next lesson as well. Dang it. I'm sorry, I faked everybody out there. Sorry about that. This will just take a minute or two longer. But basically, from the Persian Wars, once they win, the Greeks, especially the Athenians, see this as a victory and the gods saying that your way of life is good. So the Spartans think our military system is the best. And the Athenians, though, more so than the Spartans, you could say, think, well, this was a divine thing of saying our democratic way, our life of freedom is the way to go. And the gods that definitely gave us this victory to prove this. You know, and our society is better than your society type thing. Talking about the Greeks better than Persians or Athenians better than Persians. The Greeks also get quite cocky off this. Understandably, they just beat the biggest empire in the world. And so they start thinking that, you know, we can do this again if we had to. But the two really big things are, the biggest thing is that number 3 is Greece now controls the Mediterranean Sea by destroying that Persian fleet and then building up even a bigger Greek fleet that patrols the Mediterranean Sea. They protect and control and get even more rich off of the trade that they were already getting rich off in the first place, even more so, doubly so at this point. We'll talk more about that one later because that plays into things a bit, especially when you get to the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. But both sides, like, this is where we like, yeah. This next part, Athens on water, Sparta on land, this is one of those compromises that we like to see. You know, even though you're so different from each other, you can't agree on anything. At least you identify that Athens did amazing when it came to leading the navy, both at Thermopylae and at Salamis. Sparta did amazing and showed that they were the best when it came to land warfare. So if Persia were to come back, or anybody else were going to come and threaten our independence again, Athens will always lead the navies. Sparta will always lead the armies. I thought I said that right. Athens will always lead the navies. Sparta will always lead the armies. And so you get kind of this tentative peace. Even though the Greeks don't like each other still, they still realize when we work together, we do well. So that's the end of this video. I'll just end it right here. I'll see you guys in the next one.